Morning. Today we will be studying about the ECG. Now, what is the ECG? The ECG represents the electrocardiography. So this is a normal wave complex which represents the ECG. There are several stages in an ECG and several waves. So the first wave is the P wave. It represents the atrial depolarization. Now, what is depolarization? Atrial depolarization means the atrial contraction. One of the most important stage of the ECG is the ventricular depolarization, or in other words, the ventricular contraction. This is represented by the QRS complex. This is the QRX complex. And finally, this is the T wave. Now, what does the T wave represent? The T wave represents the ventricular repolarization. Now, I'll just like to tell you that what happens in the heart is represented by the ECG. So, I mean the atria are first filled with blood. There are four chambers of the heart, two atria, left and right atrium, and two similarly ventricles, left and right ventricles. So the atria filled with blood, and after filling up with blood, when they contract, the blood is simultaneously goes into the ventricles. Now, the when the vent this so this basically wave shows when the atria contract. Now, when the ventricles contract, principally the left ventricle, when the left ventricles contracts, the blood is pumped into the aorta. So the QRS complex represents the contraction of the left ventricle. And finally, the T wave. With the T wave represents when all the blood is completely goes out of the left ventricle and goes into the aorta. So now we will be studying about the various complications of the ECG complex, and how we will be know whether the ECG which is being shown is normal or is abnormal. So the ECG complex, first of all, need to know that this is a QRS complex, as you can see. However, if the QRS complex is of extremely basically very high, or this QRS complex is very broad, it represents that the ventricles have been hypertrophied. So this represents chronic heart failure. Secondly, the most common abnormality is T wave inversion. T wave inversion means that normally this T wave, as you can see, goes up. However, in an abnormal case, the T wave is inverted like this. So this represents basically heart failure. The third most common abnormality is ST elevation. As you can see, that this is the S point and this is the T. So the wave goes like somewhat like this, that this is a flat line, and this flat line gradually basically join the curve. However, in ST elevation, the instead of a flat line, there is an elevation. The line goes like this. So this ST elevation also symbolizes heart failure. So these are the most common abnormalities. Apart from that, this is the PR interval. The time period between the P wave and the R wave. So the ECG is generally plotted on a graph paper on a speed of 25 millimeters per second. So the time taken for the P wave and between the P wave and R wave to be extrapolated are about 0.16 seconds. However, if the PR wave interval is significantly increased about zero point 0.4 or zero point 0.6 just seconds, it represents bradycardia or otherwise slowed heart rate. The normal heart rate of a healthy adult person ranges from between 70 to 100, and extremely slow heart rate is between lesser than 40, whereas above 100 is signified as increased heart rate or tachycardia, in other words. Now, the most common abnormalities of ECG are ventricular fibrillation, atrial fibrillation, supraventricular tachycardia, and arrhythmia. These will be represented in the future videos which I will be covering. However, just to get a basic overview of the ECG, I have told you the principal components of the ECG. Now you need to remember that the shape of the ECG always remains the same. Thank you. I hope to see you in the next video. This was just a short video apart from all the topics we generally cover. Thank you.